think it's just us right now so far.
I was going to say,
how do you, a couple of minutes.
How do you know?
Okay, we have someone coming in. Welcome, Ankar. I hope I said your name right. Thanks for joining. People are trickling in. We're going to give it just a couple minutes before we get into the content, but we want some engagement in the chat. So if you want to chat in where you're joining from, that would be fun to see, where we have some callers join us. It's like a
Yeah, like
show.
a radio show.
What is this?
Yes,
it's a webinar, everyone. This is not on.
I don't know. I think I prefer that. I think.
Hi from New York City.
I think I'm going to win the dialing in from contest, though. I'm just going to go ahead and say that.
What's the contest? Yeah. I need a contest now, everybody.
Hi from the furthest away. I think I might
win.
Where are you? I'm in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's really far away. Literally.
We're talking about time zones. Who's calling in from the best time of day? You would win for sure.
I win.
Yeah, bright and early.
And
hello, everyone. I'm gonna give us probably one more minute, so keep letting us know where you're joining in from. I'm from the Colorado area. Awesome.
Oh, I don't know. Amit might win.
Yep.
Oh, he might have it. It's true.
He beat me. That's really far away. Yes.
All right. Kaylee, you want me to share slides and get us kicked off, or?
Yeah.
Cool. Keep letting us know where you're coming in from, everybody. Oh, we've got a few from India. So there's a few people that have you beat.
Okay, we'll take it.
All right, I think we are going to go ahead and kick things off. Thank you for joining us today for Beyond the Buzzwords, Practical Strategies for Hiring AI Talent in 2025. It's what everyone is talking about beyond just the buzzwords. Everyone's thinking about hiring AI talent or how they incorporate AI into their hiring process. So excited to chat about this today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. As you all have seen, the chat is enabled. Oops, sorry if I'm annotating. So feel free to send any questions that you would like throughout the chat today. I am going to be monitoring the chat. So if there's any questions that I want to surface for Kaylee while she's presenting to you all, I will bring those up. But otherwise, we're going to have some dedicated time in the end for Q&A. So I'll make sure that your questions get answered. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to your speaker today, Kaylee.
Hey everyone, thanks for logging in. Well, I can't see you, but it's great that you're here, and I'm excited to chat about this topic. It's very much like a buzzword topic, and we're going to try and get past that. So I'm Kaylee. I own a company called Estes Group. We do embedded recruiting for startups. So I've gotten to know the CoderPad team really well. I've also used CoderPad with almost every client that I have. So I'm super excited to chat about this topic. I also, just to give some context, earlier this year, I hired several AI engineers for one of our clients. So I'm going to be pulling a lot of my personal experience hiring for AI this year into this conversation. So please, chat it up, because I think that'll really help this be more conversational versus me just reading slides to you. So let's get going. Okay, so what are we going to chat about today? We'll just talk about kind of the AI, in the context of hiring in general, but also like how do we hire specifically AI engineering roles? For me, I think role clarity is the most important thing to really focus on. Like, what are we actually hiring for? Not just saying we want AI. How do we kind of tackle the challenges for hiring for these roles? How do we navigate incorporating AI in the interview process, sussing out AI usage in the interview process? Is it cheating? Is it not cheating? Then we also provided a very simple checklist to kind of get you started at the end. Okay, so challenge number one, so hiring for AI engineering roles. I think we have a poll. Angela, do we have a poll coming up? Okay. All right, so what is your biggest challenge around AI that you're facing kind of like at work today?
I'll give us about a minute, but
Okay.
Here we go. They're coming in.
Okay, yes.
Interesting.
I can speak for a few challenges that I ran into personally this year. So when we were interviewing for or recruiting for the AI engineering roles earlier this year, the amount of fake candidates that we are inundated with from an application side was a major problem that we had to get through. It was shocking. And then cheating was like, cheating and legal compliance were like the two big topics with our client. So we can talk about that a little bit. Okay, so what was the winner? Angela, I couldn't see the results.
Oh, okay. Well, we had some ties going. We had
Okay.
between basically what you mentioned, deep fake
Okay.
risk, and then a
Okay.
tie between cheating.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so they
right.
might,
Yeah.
depending on how they look at it, it might fall, go hand in hand. But yeah, you covered exactly the top challenges
Okay.
that came through.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all thinking about like those three topics pretty much every day right now in talent acquisition. So I would say that we're kind of in that moment where things are changing really, really fast. We are having to build the airplane while we're flying. So AI is definitely changing the landscape. And I personally believe that talent acquisition is steering the ship for our hiring teams. So, if you think about where talent acquisition, where we all kind of live and breathe within an organization, our company wants to start thinking about AI. They want to, be more cutting edge. They want to build an AI related product. Okay, we need to go figure out A, how are we going to hire for those people? And then B, how are we going to interview them? And I think a big disconnect is, okay, our company wants to hire for this, but then they're not going to allow like the basic usage of AI in interviews. Or how do we really screen for AI fluency if we don't allow for AI usage in the interview? And then another common thing that I hear about is we have a very high hiring bar, and we all had to interview here a certain way to get hired here. I don't want to lower the bar for future candidates now. That is a very common thing that I'm hearing across almost every client that I have right now. And so, with all of this disconnect between leadership, our hiring teams, us as recruiting professionals, it can create a lot of friction throughout the process, and it can really slow down your ability to hire for these roles and make it really difficult. And then at the end of the day, are you even hiring for the right person? So we'll kind of break down some of these challenges. And if you guys are experiencing this, like, please drop it in the chat, because I would love, to hear what you're kind of going through as well. So for me, if I'm a head of TA, head of recruiting, senior recruiter at a company, the most important thing where I like to start is, one, understanding like the high level vision from the company of, okay, what is it that we're going after? Why are we choosing to use AI? Why are we building an AI product? Where is this taking our company? And then that's going to trickle down through your headcount plan, where you're going to have this new batch of jobs. And now we need to think about, okay, role clarity around those jobs. This is recruiting 101. I know that. I know that almost everybody on this call is probably already thinking about this, but it is so important because everybody is putting AI in a job description right now. Everybody is putting AI in a job title. How many job titles are there? AI engineer, semantic AI engineer, natural language processing engineer, software engineer with AI software engineer. All of these job titles means something different at every company. So you need to understand as a recruiter how to help your hiring manager break down exactly what they're hiring for. So what is the business trying to accomplish? We're going to remove the buzzwords, just like we removed the buzzwords, years past, all the startup buzzwords. We now need to do that with AI. What are the actual skills needed to perform the job? I think about this in kind of two categories. We have the traditional like coding skills that we know candidates need to be able to be a software engineer at a company. And then thinking about, okay, what AI fluency skills should be included as well? Are those relevant to this job? And being able to break those down and articulate them is going to help you think about how do we interview for them. What level of AI knowledge is actually necessary? What about theoretical expertise? There's a lot of people that can talk about AI, but have actually never used it or have never built products with it. You need to be able to discern that. And then I also think it's helpful, to really challenge your hiring managers on what are they actually going to be working on? Why are you titling this an AI engineer if they're not going to be building an AI related product? That's a very common thing right now. What are the performance expectations and all of those things? So to me, this is like table stakes. You should not be posting a job until you have this figured out, because it's going to help you interview better. It's going to help your hiring manager. It's also going to pressure test, is this actually a real job that we need or not? So the key skills to assess in an AI engineer. Again, this is very role specific, but I think for me, what I've seen, these, kind of check boxes really hit the mark, like knowing where AI can actually make sense. The two AI roles that I hired for earlier this year, one was focused specifically on data pipeline and data ingestion, and there was also a semantic search component to it. So semantic search and semantic like labeling of data. So data pipeline, storage management, and then an area of a bit of controversy with that particular client when we were like really trying to dig into the skills they actually needed and what the role actually was. The topic of prompt engineering came up. Like, is this really just a prompt engineer? Is it further than that? So I think being able to dig into that a little bit. And then also, I still think at the end of the day, most companies are hiring a software engineer first and foremost. So being able to suss out those skills is still going to be, I think, the number one priority. And then figuring out the AI experience, I think, is going to be number two. Unless, you're working at OpenAI and you're looking for the most cutting edge AI engineers that exist, like I really think you're still just looking to hire a software engineer that's kind of evolving with the times. Okay, so how are we going to structure an actual interview? So we've clarified we do need to hire a software engineer. They either have AI knowledge or they're going to be an AI software engineer. How do we actually interview them now? One, you need to prioritize the things that matter, just like you always have. So thinking about testing the actual skills that are critical to the role. And this is where truly knowing what you're interviewing for is so essential. And I always like to dig into kind of real life examples of what they've done, past experiences. I love a technical project walkthrough where candidates like bring a technical project to the table. Of course, I'm not talking about entry level talent. I'm talking about your more experienced engineer. Bring something to the table, talk to us about it. Let's talk about the technical decisions that went into that, things like that. I really believe in realistic interviews. I don't really believe in the hypotheticals. I think the closer your interview is to the actual work the candidate will be doing, the better, because then you're actually getting a pulse on what they can actually do and how much value it's going to bring to your team. So I think giving a business problem that's related or close to it is very important. And then you can dig into like the depth of their knowledge. Like I always think about it like how much breadth do they have, how much depth do they have in certain topics. And I think, systems design exercises, project walkthroughs, you can really like dig into that. Um, the question of using AI in coding interviews. So I think it is important, especially if you're hiring for an AI engineer or a software engineer who's going to be building an AI related product or incorporating LLMs into the work that they're doing. You need to understand their current fluency and ability to use AI. So I really do think it's important for teams to try to incorporate the usage of AI into the interview process. But I think there's guardrails you can put around it to prevent kind of the scary situations that we're hearing about. So you actually still can hire a software engineer who knows how to write code. I think that's a big concern that I hear about is, okay, if we start allowing AI in the coding challenge, what if we hire somebody that can't write code? Well, I think we can put guardrails up around that. But at the end of the day, if you need to know their AI fluency, how else are you going to test it? So I also think this kind of like ties into all of it, but project-based interviews is another great option where you're asking them to create a small like app or something like that, bring it to the interview. Let's discuss it. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? How did you do it? And we can put some guardrails around making sure they were the one that actually completed that work.
Kaylee, question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation, how TA professionals right now are really steering the ship and guiding this process. What does this stage look like when you're working with the hiring managers and the engineering side and coming together to actually put together an interview process that meets, like both teams where they're at?
Absolutely. So this is very much like the feeling that I had working with the client earlier this year was we were building the plane while flying. Like we had to interview ASAP. We had to make these hires as fast as we could, but we had no interview process. We had no job description. We literally were starting from scratch. So I think it happens in a bit of phase. And I think if you have a current interview framework that you're using at your company to hire software engineers already, I think you can mold that to creating an interview process for these roles. And I think you bring that to the table. So, not to sound like death by meetings, but you're probably having that really good intake meeting and you're providing a rough draft of like, okay, this is what we think the general steps of the interview process will be. And then you have to rely on your teams to be able to start digging into like the exact kind of method that they're going to use. Like I can't write a coding challenge. I can't. Wish I could. I can't. I can help with the rubric though. So I think that's where the TA team comes in, and it's our job to kind of like keep everybody on track. And at the end of the day, you really can't open the job and start interviewing until this work is done. So I think it's very close partnership with your hiring managers. I think if you have a framework you can bring to the table, that's really important. It gives them a starting point, and then they can fill in the blank. So does that answer the question?
I think that's a great answer.
Okay.
And then another question around this topic too, when you're hiring AI specific roles, what does the screening process look like at the very start of things when you're trying to go through resumes and determine, okay, what are these resumes that are filled with buzzwords and which ones actually show true skill set in that area? Any tips on what you can?
Okay, I don't have a perfect answer. I really do think recruiters are probably spending more time than ever digging through applications because we have a application volume issue in general, I think. So the resumes that stood out that were just not a real or just were filled with AI buzzwords and things like that. Once you start looking at resumes, you're going to start noticing those patterns. I would go the extra step of I was looking at everybody's LinkedIn profile. I know that sounds really basic, but like I would look at their resume, look at their LinkedIn profile. I also noticed a lot of the fake resumes would have like really a lot of the large companies. And it was like, okay, this person worked at Apple, Meta, OpenAI. Like they literally worked at every amazing company out there. And then they would have a picture of them with like their cat on LinkedIn. Like it just wasn't, there were tendencies that you would pick up after going through it. I also, with that particular client, their ATS had a really great thing where, well, most ATSs will do this, but we added application questions. And I thought that was helpful because a lot of candidates would just be like NA, 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 not answering. I'm not even going to look at that candidate. And then you would have the candidates that clearly like were prompting ChatGPT and they accidentally would include the prompt. So we could remove those. And then you had the candidates that actually like thoughtfully answered the question and included like an example of a project they had worked on or something like that. So I think it used to be that you wanted your application process to be like as easy as possible to get as many applications as possible. I actually think we're reverting back to where we want just a small amount of friction in the application process so that the people applying are actually interested in your job and hopefully somewhat qualified. So I think just looking at the overall quality of the resume, you're going to start pulling stuff out. Consider adding application questions. That ATS also had an AI kind of filtering where we could highlight the skills that were really important, and it would highlight kind of a score or like a rank per candidate. So we could at least start with a smaller batch that hopefully met the majority of our criteria. That doesn't address the phone screen. I'm happy to talk about what we did there too, if that's helpful.
I mean, we can look at hand raises in the chat, but I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So in the phone screen, we started out doing phone interviews. What we realized was we were talking to a lot of candidates that they were not who they still got through, like their resumes early on, especially. We were talking to a few candidates that were not who they were saying they were. So we shifted to video. So I do think if your team has capacity for video interviewing, I personally love doing interviews over the phone. Video can be pretty fatiguing after a while, but I do think it's important to consider that so that you're seeing the candidate through each step of the process and you're kind of making sure you're talking to the same person and checking all of that, all of those boxes. My favorite story of a fake candidate was I was on an interview and elevator music turned on and the candidate was in a call center. And it was just a call center of fake people. So that's when we switched over to using video. And the way that I interview, particularly, I like to focus on the projects that they've done. So I'm always like, so tell me what you did here. Why did you do that? Who all was involved? How big was your team? What was the goal of this? What went well? What failed? And those are the types of questions that I'm asking. And those are really hard to just type into ChatGPT and get like, a response to say on the fly. So I felt like we were having better conversations and you could get to like the depth of their experience a bit better. And then of course the hiring manager would then layer on to that initial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question in the chat here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Major challenge we face. Profiles are made by ChatGPT or resume builders. Yeah, this is a problem. How can we eliminate these profiles? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you're going to be able to eliminate these coming into your application pool, but I do think using whatever tools your ATS has available in terms of application questions, if they have a ranking, honestly, it was really good at kind of removing the really buzzword filled that didn't have like substance in their bullet points. So your ATS might be able to help with that, but I think adding a little bit of friction to your interview process will help hopefully reduce the number of these applications coming through. And I also think go to their LinkedIn, like go one layer deeper, go to their GitHub, go to request a portfolio, like do whatever you can to kind of get a sense of what they've actually been working on versus like what they plugged into a resume builder.
Very helpful. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Okay, so how does CoderPad help with this. So, like I said earlier, actually the majority of my clients use CoderPad. And there's a few different ways. When we were hiring the AI engineers, I reached out to the CoderPad team specifically to say, hey, you have to be helping other companies solve this problem. Can you please help, like, give me a starting point on how we should build a technical challenge? And the particular team that I was with, they ended up sticking with their own coding challenge that they used. But what we did, so they would do their own coding challenge, and they also had a policy, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but they did have a policy that AI usage was not allowed, which we were like, on the fence about, because again, you're hiring a software engineer or an AI software engineer, but you're not letting them use AI. That just feels not right and kind of counterintuitive, but that's the decision that they made. So they had a policy where AI usage was not allowed during the interview process. So they did use CoderPad to conduct their coding challenge, but they turned off all of the AI functionality or ability within the actual platform. So what we added was a technical kind of project walkthrough, and every candidate that reached that stage had to bring a project that they had worked on that was an AI product they had built. And it wasn't a side project. They had to be doing it in their professional work. So that helped us. But I think if I could have nudged the client a little bit more, I really do think I would have encouraged them to use one of the templates that kind of exists within the CoderPad platform, or to allow the AI usage, because then you can see kind of the best of both worlds. You can see, okay, they can do this coding on their own, but then this is how they're using AI in their workflow. And you get an understanding of how much they're relying on it versus how much they're coding over here. And when Angela and I were prepping for this, one thing I forgot to call out on kind of the intake meeting side is understand what your team is currently using. If you're dealing with a hiring manager that's like, I don't want to allow them to use AI during an interview, a question I would ask is, okay, so what are your software engineers using right now in terms of AI tools? There's a million out there. What are they using? What is our company allowing? And that way you can incorporate some questions around those tools as well, because wouldn't it be helpful if they have experience with Copilot or these other things from day one? Or are we just going to pretend that people aren't using that in their job? So I do think that this is really helpful and something that could help with your hiring managers. So
Yeah.
So we've already talked a lot about this, but challenge number 2, just AI within the hiring process itself.
Yeah. And I thought that was a good segue into it, because that process definitely felt like it was something that would apply in both scenarios, as you talk about, now not just hiring the AI engineer, but what amount of AI are you going to allow, if any, in the process? And it seems like, the conversation, I'm looking at the chat around cheating is definitely top of mind for people. So I do think it's timely. We're going to go ahead and launch another poll specifically around what people are doing today as it relates to anti-cheating, and just like get a consensus of how people are feeling their current process is set up.
And also to kind of address Narav's comment, I totally agree with you that cheating has increased a lot, especially this year. But again, I think this is where you have to think about how you're asking the question, because if you're asking open-ended questions that cannot easily be typed into ChatGPT and spit out like a canned response, you're going to have better interviews, and you're quickly going to be able to hang up on the people that can't get through that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about safeguarding from cheating. I think it's also important, you have to define what cheating is. Like, what are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? For me, I think the concept of cheating is the fear that, okay, a candidate has used AI to give them a level up and pass our interview without being able to actually do the job we're hiring them to do. That to me is cheating in one scenario. The other one is false representation, like this candidate is not who they say they are. I think there are safeguards around both of those topics, but those are kind of like two different categories, and you have to have safeguards to kind of protect you against both. I live in Georgia, and recently there was a story where a company in Georgia, you guys can Google this, they hired 3 people that were, they were, bad actors essentially, and they're a cryptocurrency company, and they drained their cryptocurrency reserves after working for them for 2 years. It took 2 years, and then they attacked, and it was all over NPR, and it was in Atlanta, so it's like my backyard. And so there are absolutely safeguards you have to put in place for making sure you are hiring who they say they are. But then in terms of like for talent acquisition, I think that's more of like an HR onboarding thing as well. But for talent acquisition, I think let's just make sure they can do the job that we're asking them to do, and that they don't just rely 100% on AI to be able to do that. Like they need to be able to write code. So before, AI is definitely changing how engineers are working in general. Again, back to the question to your hiring manager, what AI are your engineers using in their day-to-day work? I think that's important because it gives you kind of a baseline. If they say none, my next question would be, why are you hiring an AI engineer? Or why are you advertising, AI skills on your job description? But let's say they're not. Let's just say this is a standard software engineering job. We're worried that they're going to use AI to get past the interview. So I think your challenges need to have very clear guidelines around them. You need to be asking open-ended questions, and you need to find a platform that's going to help kind of like monitor what's happening during the interview. And I think also what will help prevent cheating, or what will make it more obvious, is when you do provide really good guidelines to candidates around what is allowed, what's not allowed, and then you provide the platform for them to conduct the interview within, so you can set up some safeguards around it. Okay, so there are definite challenges around, restrictions with our AI use. So I think company-wide, we need to understand like what's our policy, what's our standpoint on this. I think a lot of companies are hesitant to go all in on allowing AI in interviews. So they need to just create some clarity around like the policy, what is allowed, what's not allowed, and you need to document it and understand like where the policy is coming from. Is it fear because we're not controlling kind of the interview process in general, and we don't know what candidates are doing, therefore we don't know if we're hiring people that can actually do what we need them to do? Is it just general lack of understanding around AI usage and how developers are using it to like really better their work? And then again, the most common pushback that I received when hiring the AI engineers was from the engineering team. And it was around creating this unfair advantage, which I very much understood and empathized with. And honestly, I don't know that there's a perfect answer, other than times are evolving and we have to kind of like keep with that as well. So that's why we incorporated the technical project walkthrough. We still did like a raw coding challenge. We did not allow them to use AI in that challenge, but we allowed them to highlight their AI experience in the technical project. So I think there's a way to make both sides happy, and you kind of have to know your hiring team and how to navigate that. And then I think slowly you can enact change once you see how things are going. But yeah, TA is in the trickiest spot, I think, because they're kind of navigating all of this and they still have hiring goals that they have to meet. So has anybody gone through that with their team? Is anybody like dealing with a hiring manager right now who feels like you're lowering the hiring bar? I feel like that's the worst thing you can hear as a recruiter is, well, feels like you're lowering the bar. It's like, I'm really not. I'm just trying to make sure we can hire the people we need to hire. Okay. So again, defining cheating versus tool use. So again, audit your team's current usage. What are they using now? What tools? And think about like, how could we add that to the interview setting in a way that is helping us, not hurting us? I would also think through like the misrepresentation piece. There's misrepresenting who you are. There's also misrepresenting like the actual skills that you have. And then I would say you really need to create documentation around this. And I think you could use a tool that will help kind of prevent cheating in general.
I think it might be time for a poll too about, just
Yeah.
from the group that's here today, what they consider cheating in their organization. Since you touched on that a bit, it really depends on, someone's
Yeah.
definition. And it could be too, like what you consider cheating against what's fraud.
Yeah. I think there's cheating, and then I think there's outright just fraud. And they're also probably cheating to get the job. So they are tied, but I think we don't have any slides on this, but to just kind of say it, I do think you need to have HR guardrails. You need to partner closely with HR around verification of who people are. Some common things that will happen, and these are pretty obvious, so just ignore me if you know these already, but like changing your address at the last minute after somebody's been hired, like the mailing address of where their computer is going. I think one thing that I really like is when HR will do like a quick 10-minute, hey, it's so nice to meet you. Let's have a quick little video call before your first day. Let's chat through and make sure you're all set. Here's your equipment. Here's who you're going to meet with. I just think any extra layer is going to help make sure you're hiring who you think you're hiring. And I'm still amazed that people can get through this with like identity verification and everything they have to do to set up their first day, but they do. So I think anything we can do to help with that and partnering with HR would be great. So what did people say in here?
Yeah, so definitely about tool usage and what tools people are saying that they're going to be using in the interview.
Yeah.
And then we got a lot of even on video interviews, I've had this come up even for non-technical roles. Like it's very apparent that there's AI tools being used to answer questions like during the live interview.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of things around just not being transparent when a tool is being used. Yeah. And then it's very obvious, it seems to some people, that AI is helping to answer all of the questions.
Yeah.
And you can tell when there's not any sort of like unique thought or perspective. And then this is an interesting one too. So sharing interview questions online after the interview or recording the interview and then sharing it so that others can prepare. That's an interesting one.
The recording the interview, I have not thought about, but I feel like that's always been a challenge. I don't know that that's specifically a new challenge that we're facing right now, because there's always been Glassdoor where you can go and share the interview questions that are being asked. There's also like a lot of other like Discord channels and things like that where people will talk about interviewing at a company. I do think this also is not a topic that we added to this presentation specifically, but I think we all have to level up our interviewing skills, because in general, it's just harder to interview people right now, and we need to know how to adapt to that. And so recruiters and hiring managers, I think, really thinking about how you're interviewing, how you're asking your questions, how you're kind of responding to the answers that you're getting. And if you suspect somebody is using a prompting tool on an interview, ask them, hey, are you using any AI tools right now to answer these questions? I think that's fair. Like you should ask and see how they handle that.
That's a good point. Yeah, like really catch someone on the fly and see what their reaction is.
So there's a question in the chat around, do you think you're able to catch if someone is cheating like reasonably easily? Yes and no. The very obvious ones, yes, because they take a minute. They're clearly reading a screen. Their responses are very canned. So I think after you've done a few interviews on these roles specifically, you can start sussing out who really knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. Um, Reasonably easy. I don't know if I would say it's easy, but it's definitely doable for recruiters to start recognizing it, but you're not going to get it 100% of the time. Again, I ended up talking to a guy who had a fake LinkedIn picture of a cat hiking a mountain. Like I missed that, you know, and that was one of my early calls. And so um things fall through and they'll slip through, and that's why you need to have like multiple checks and balances throughout the process. But yeah, I think the more people you're talking to, if you're really paying attention to their answers or you're doing video interviews, you can really see them like, okay, they're having to kind of like, they're literally not answering your question, they're reading and then they answer your question. There's things like that that you can pick up on.
Right. On here, I think we're getting right to the grand finale.
Okay. So here's, whenever I do a webinar or anything like that, I always want something that I can actually like take with me and use. So here's this very basic checklist to kind of get you started. If your team is either about to hire a software engineer or a technical role that AI is a requirement for, or you just want more clear processes in place to help address the usage of AI in interviews or things like that. This is just a simple checklist. You need documentation and you need policy around what's allowed, what's not allowed. A policy may sound a little bit like overkill for a really small company. You may not need like a formal outline policy, but you need documentation around what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow. And then you need to create email templates in your ATS. And I would even say like a phone template for your recruiters if they have the capacity to do interview prep calls. This way you can include communication to candidates. So ahead of any interview, you should have some documentation in your email template to the candidate confirming their interview around what the interview is going to cover, just like the high level, you know, just the basic expectations of how they can prepare and what they are allowed to use and not use. I think this is really important. And I have kind of a real world example of why. So I have another client who was hiring for a software engineer earlier this year. And this wasn't our candidate, it was an application candidate. Got all the way through the interview process to the final interview. And I was talking to the hiring manager around why they didn't hire the person. And they said, well, they used AI throughout the whole coding challenge. And I was like, well, did you tell them they're not allowed to use AI in the coding challenge? And they hadn't even thought about it. They just assumed that candidates know you're not supposed to use this in a coding challenge. They don't. They're going to use it. You have to say it out loud. You have to document it. And then if they still decide to use it, you can say they're cheating. I don't really think you can say that if you didn't outline it in the beginning. So include an email template, interview prep for candidates at each stage. Just throw it in your ATS. The recruiters can fire it off just like they do with all the other email templates they have. If they have the capacity to do a prep call, I think the more you are talking live to candidates right now, the better. So I would be calling every candidate that I have about to go through a coding challenge to walk them through what to expect, what is allowed, what is not allowed, hit the AI topic head on. And then you also need to prep your interview panel and make sure that they're aligned on kind of the rules of engagement, what's allowed, what's not allowed, how we're going to be digging in. And you should also probably consider some interview training as well, which is not on this list, but I would add it just so that we can help our interviewers be better prepared to conduct good interviews. So, Angela, there's a question around, does CoderPad have a feature to detect AI usage in coding interviews?
We do, yes. And we're going to be sharing some information because it seems like that was a pretty hot topic with everyone after the webinar, and we'll send some resources on exactly how CoderPad helps to do that. Yeah.
Are there
Yeah.
any other questions or situations that you're facing that you kind of want to talk through or brainstorm?
All right.
Okay.
Well, with that, unless Kayla, you have anything else you want to touch on or recap with the group, I just definitely want to surface, yes, CoderPad does have features to help detect AI usage and other forms of cheating, and we'll share those after the webinar. But we'd also love to offer a strategy session for anyone on the call who wants to discuss more of the entire process that we can help with: screening, interview, hiring, AI specific roles, or AI just within your hiring process. We're happy to have a strategic session with you. So I am going to go ahead and just drop another quick poll. So if you are interested in speaking more with the team, we can gather that information and make sure that someone from the team can get back to you all. But aside from that, Kaylee, any last wrap up you want to share with the group?
No, just good luck with everything, and ask for help. Your peers are all kind of facing the same situation, so everybody has a different idea of how to tackle it, and people are always more than willing to help in these situations. So
Well, thank you. That was super informative. Thank you, everyone, for joining today and for chatting with us and engaging in our polls. It always makes it a lot more fun when you all engage with us. So thank you so much. And keep a lookout for some of the resources that we'll send your way that'll hopefully help with some of the topics that came up today. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
bye.